What's up YouTube, I'm Christophernegroni, and today we're taking a look at the real watch enthusiast choice within the Rolex catalog. We're talking about the Rolex Explorer II Polar. This watch is the anti-flex Rolex, and despite its lack of hype, it just might be my next pickup. Alright, so I must admit, since the very beginning of my journey in this hobby, I've never really been a fan of the Explorer II. Models to me like the Explorer II, the Air King, and even the Yachtmaster always felt to me like tier 2 Rolex steel sports watches. They sat below the true kings, the Submariner, GMT Master, and of course, the Daytona. Everything else felt like a spin-off of those watches, an expansion if you will, second place. And it's not just a feeling. Take the Yachtmaster for example. It was quite literally created with the intention of being a better Submariner, but in reality, how do you improve on perfection? The Submariner is an icon, and as a result, the Yachtmaster was relegated to being the Sub's ugly stepsister, with the worst name. Now the Explorer II is an example of a Rolex that was created for a very niche set of individuals, you know, those who aspire to explore the deepest, the darkest of crevasses. Very, very special people. On a side note, the name Explorer II, I feel like is a big miss. They had it right there. You know, they had the Sea Dweller already in the Rolex catalog. They had already created the Sea Dweller. Why not Cave Dweller? The Cave Dweller. Oh, what a big miss. The Cave Dweller. That would have been so dope. So Explorer II it is. But you know what they say about sequels? They're never as good as the originals. The Explorer II has always been kind of an odd duck in the Rolex lineup. By the 1970s, Rolex had already created watches for some of the most extreme endeavors on Earth. Deep sea diving, global aviation, even scientific breakthroughs in the lab. So what could be next for Rolex? Well, cave dwellers, of course. In usual fashion, Rolex created a watch that consumers didn't ask for and didn't know that they'd love until decades later. The original 1655 dubbed the Frencioni or the Steve McQueen, despite Steve McQueen never owning or wearing one, but that's a story for another day. It featured small offset squares and rectangles that created a checkerboard pattern for 24-hour time. At the time, it was highly criticized for being difficult to read, but that design was actually quite intentional. The goal for Rolex was to create a watch that cave dwellers could use to indicate AM/PM in environments where little to no light would be available for days on end. That's why the Explorer II featured a giant orange 24-hour hand, not to track a second time zone like the modern Explorer II, but to serve as a dedicated 24-hour display for the time of day. The watch was originally filled with tritium, providing cave explorers with plenty of glow to last for days. And it's no wonder that the Explorer II has always struggled to gain popularity with the mass consumers. It's built for such an extremely specific purpose, but I think that it's that same determination to create a true tool watch, something built for a specific type of explorer that really draws the enthusiast in. And despite its eventual demise and resurrection with this much more subdued design, the Explorer II's soul and original purpose still live on in this modern version. The Rolex Explorer II reference 226570, nicknamed the Polar. It features a case diameter of 42 millimeters, a thickness of around 12.4 millimeters, a lug-to-lug of about 50 millimeters. The bracelet is 22 millimeters, tapering down to 17 millimeters and back up to a clasp at 19 millimeters. It's a mix of mostly brushed surfaces with polished sides, giving it that true tool watch look and feel. The folding oyster lock safety clasp has Rolex's Easy Link, allowing for a 5mm comfort extension. I imagine that's just enough for any humid cave diving explorations or after a few Coronas. Inside we have Rolex's Caliber 3285, which is a true GMT movement, allowing the user to independently track another time zone, or like its original intention as a dedicated 24-hour hand. Of course, we have an industry standard 70 hours of power reserve and 100 meters of water resistance. This watch has definitely softened from its original quirkiness. The hour markers now resemble those of the Submariner, GMT Master, and Yacht Master. It's also much larger than its original size at 42 millimeters, ultimately losing its case chamfers and that funky font around the bezel. But for all the ways it's been smoothed over, it actually remains quite a unique sports watch. For one, it's the only professional steel sports watch with a timing bezel that has yet to succumb to the beautification of Rolex. The GMT was first to go. The GMT, Submariner, Daytona, they all have ceramic bezels now, and they all feature their glamorous versions of themselves. You know, even the Explorer I has a gold variant now. So I think it's pretty surprising to me that the Explorer II has yet to receive these two changes. It is yet to receive a ceramic bezel and or a gold variant. There's no arguing that both of these features are purely aesthetic, whether it's making the bezel more scratch resistant with ceramic or adding gold for extra shine. These updates have become standard across Rolex sports watches, except for the Explorer II. And if you talk to the people who adore this model, that's a big reason why they choose it. There's still these details in the Explorer II that really harken back to old Rolex, and it's what a lot of people still love about this model. You know, you look at the sunburst brushing around the bezel, and it's really reminiscent of how Rolex used to do finely cut chamfers on all of their cases. There's something about an all brush steel sports Rolex that just hits differently. Now, personally, I do love this aspect of Rolex, but the type of guy who really just can't get enough of this watch, he's the EDC guy, you know, he's the camper, he's the outdoor enthusiast, he's the type of guy that also collects knives, you know? The Explorer II just fits that mold perfectly. Another reason it's such a great choice? Well, it's one of the very few white dial steel sports watches in the Rolex catalog. I mean, aside from the steel Daytona, what else do we have? And let's be real, getting a Panda Daytona is damn near impossible. So this is pretty much the only choice. There's something refreshing about a crisp white dial. It always pops and tends to wear bigger on the wrist. White dials also absorb their environment more, whether you're under a moody, dark campfire glow or a bright, snowy day, a white dial just feels more dynamic and more fun on the wrist. And as much as I would love for Rolex to drop a white dial Explorer I, you know, the albino, or even a polar Submariner, they just won't do it. See, if you speak Rolex language, you know that the professional models are their babies, you know, and in the world of Rolex professional models, it means a couple things. Professional models have to have black dials with high contrasting hour markers. And yeah, they could easily flip that recipe. They could do a white dial, high contrast black hour markers, but they're just stubborn. They won't do that. So for now, the Explorer II is one of the only options if you want that crispy white dial on a steel sports Rolex. The Explorer II is easily one of the most unique models in the catalog today. It's got a cool story, it's got great design, it's got undeniable wrist presence. But the real question is, will this be my next Rolex? Well, the simple answer is no. And at this point, it's a pretty definitive no for a few reasons. Now, the only exploring I ever really do is exploring the jungle gym with my daughter, which, to be fair, can make for some hard wearing and battle scars. My everyday life just doesn't lend itself to needing a dedicated cave exploring watch. I need my Rolexes to be the complete package. Before I finally got the chance to size this watch to my wrist and actually wear it around, I had only ever seen it in photos, on display in stores, and briefly tried it on in boutiques. Now, I'm incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to just wear the Explorer II, to have it sized to my wrist, to just wear it over a period of, several days. It was definitely valuable information because I seriously considered buying this watch. In fact, a little while back, I was offered the black dial variant of this watch, in which I really liked it. I liked it on wrist, and it appeared smaller to the eye. But whether it's a black dial or a white dial, this watch is just not comfortable. I never forget that it's on my wrist. The only saving grace is that it's slightly thinner than a sub, but honestly, that just means that dinner plate feeling is even closer and hotter on your wrist. The wider bracelet feels like it has a stranglehold on my entire wrist. I can't even wear it for a full day. A bigger watch like this, especially one that is a little bit flatter, tends to stick to your wrist. and you'll find yourself wishing it had glide lock to relieve that overall watch strangle. Now maybe that's a tad bit dramatic. Maybe many of you have this watch and you wear it all day and you find it very comfortable. But when I would wear this watch, it just felt like a dinner plate on my wrist, and I just couldn't wait to get it off of my wrist. You just can't make up for wrist feel. Wrist feel is so important. Rolex, please make an Explorer II in a 39.5. 39.5 Explorer II. The people want it. I can't deny that the tool watch side of me kind of loved the overall package. As an admirer of Rolex and their history and the stories surrounding their watches, this one has some of the best storytelling, but not the best. For me, the history of the Submariner and the Daytona absolutely trumped the Explorer II in icon status and just overall badassness. And this may surprise a lot of you, but one of the main reasons the Explorer II is admired ultimately becomes the reason I wouldn't buy one. I know most like the Explorer II because it has that tool watch vibe. It's not as flashy, it's big and brutish, and that's cool. But at the end of the day, that's kind of all it is. And the Rolexes that speak to me enough to actually buy are the ones that have that tool watch DNA, but also feature a bit of that Rolex beautification. Yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I like a pretty watch. I like a bit of Rolex beautification on my tool watches. Don't forget, everybody, I'm a total hype beast. At the end of the day, I'm a total hype beast. You know, I love ceramic bezels. I love the polished mid links on my Daytona. I love that hyped panda dial. I love that it's hype. You know, it's still a racing chronograph, but it's a racing chronograph that says, you know, I like caviar too. And you know, my Submariner with its beautiful, gorgeous, bright green bezel. That bezel that'll never fade. It'll take me scuba diving just fine. But it'll perform even better when I'm down at the tiki bar taking shots that night. That's how I wear my watches, okay? The Explorer II just doesn't do that complete package. You know, when you put it up against, you know, the real tier 1 professional watches in the Rolex catalog, it loses every time because it's not the complete package. Nonetheless, the Explorer II is still a great watch. Don't get me wrong, it's a great watch. It's a Rolex, okay? Remember, I gotta be dramatic here for entertainment purposes, okay? If you have an Explorer II, it's a great watch. You know, you can't go wrong with any of these professional steel sports Rolexes. They're all great, but before I go, let me thank my friend Oaken, who was kind enough to lend me this awesome watch. You've been a great supporter of the channel. I really appreciate you. I gotta say, the watch community is filled with some great people. You know, the people who love and collect these watches, they can be so generous and kind. We're really such a small minority group of people. The people who really obsess about these tiny little trinkets. You know, the people who want to share their collections, who want to learn more about these watches. I'm really grateful to have met some great collectors, some really awesome people who are generous enough to lend me something like an expensive Rolex. So thanks again, brother. You're the man. I know how important that Explorer II is to you, but I'm gonna save that story for when we can do a little collector spotlight, you know? And I know that the community will really appreciate that story and, you know, all the stories you have to tell. But until then, Negroni out.